Okay, so let's get started the day 4 of the session. So today, so far we were spending more time to kind of understand about Java. So we are going to take a detour and trying to kind of understand from a programming concept perspective why Java is called an object-oriented programming, or in a simple term, what is an object-oriented programming? Okay. Again, we'll try to do this by writing programs. So I mean, today we might have to go a little slow just to make sure that all of you are clear about the concept, because it's important that we understand object-oriented programming and how it differs from a structured way of programming. Okay, so feel free to ask me questions. I mean, you can stop me anytime, and I will be more than happy to kind of answer your question. As always, you can use codecollab.io for writing any programs. Very simple. Go to codecollab.io, get started, select Java, and start writing programs. Create project and start writing programs. Okay. I will be using IntelliJ, and I have also shared how to download the IntelliJ. If you haven't still done it, please feel free to do it, because it might become a little more and more difficult for you to write the program in codecollab.io as we go into more, more sessions. It is, I mean, you can still write using CodeCollab, but having an IDE like an IntelliJ will help you a lot. Okay. So when we started the session, we talked about primitive data type, right? I mean, even before that, when we started talking about the programming language, we told that in any programming language, there is two components. One is the data, and then the functions or the process that we do on the data. So if you take up any program, at the end of the day, each of this program is doing the activity on a data. It's not mandatory that it always needs to be on a data, but there is always going to be a data, and you are going to process on that data. It could be to kind of find out what is the interest that needs to be paid to a person who has invested a fixed amount in a fixed deposit in a bank. So you might be using your program to do that, where the data would be what is the initial amount he has deposited in a bank. That's one data. And what is the interest rate for in that bank? That is also another data. And the process is, how do you calculate the interest, that how much should be paid to that person? So that's the process part of it, or the function part of it, or the activity part of it, however you want to call it. So when we talk about the programming, these are the two things that we keep working on. And when in the first two sessions, we talked about some of the various different data types, right? We talked about primitive data types, like very, very simple. How do we store integers? How do we store like character? And how do we basically store a Boolean value? So these are the very simple primitive data type that we talked about. And then we got introduced to a little bit more complex data types. Any guesses what was the two non-primitive data type that we have already worked on?
So arrays and strings.
Okay, so how does an array and string different from a primitive data type?
They hold values.
So even primitive data type holds value, right? How is
no,
array?
But it's a sequence of values.
So arrays is basically a sequence of values. So it is not this. I mean, it's not like it can hold only one value. It can hold multiple different values, right? Correct?
Yes, sir.
So, but what is the one restriction, or what is one challenge that you have seen with array being able to hold multiple values? What do you think array cannot hold?
Can it hold other arrays? No, it can.
It can hold other arrays, but there is still a restriction which an array basically has.
Repetition?
Not repetition.
Oh, it can only hold the same type.
Exactly. So one of the biggest challenge with arrays is, if you are creating an array of integer, that array can hold only integer type of values. If you are creating an array of string, that can only hold, basically the same string type of values. And string is not.
But you can take, you can make an array of objects.
No, so we are still to come there, right? So that's a
Because it's a base class.
yeah. So array can hold an object, but array cannot hold a different objects. Even if you are holding object, it has to be the same object. We'll come to that in a little later stage, because we haven't discussed about objects yet. So we'll come back to that. But even if, just for your clarification, even if you are holding an object in an array, if that object type is of A, all the array will have object type of A. You cannot have a B object type in an array. So string is nothing but a character array, but what happens is string basically provides you more capabilities. Like string helps you to kind of convert the character arrays into a lowercase, uppercase. So you can call this as like a utility functions, which basically help you to make your life easy and much better. So every time, I ask you guys to, can you reverse a string? If you are using a class like string, you don't have to identify, or you don't need to learn the logic of how to reverse a string. You can just use a function or a method which is there in the string to reverse that statement or a sentence. In a way, these functions are written by programmers who, with the intent to help you to kind of make the life easy and simple, right? Now, arrays and strings are something which is provided as a part of Java, but you also have an option to create more different type of data types, like objects, classes, interface. So we are going to kind of discuss about object, classes, and interface. But before we discuss about object, classes, and interface, it's important that we understand why Java is called an object-oriented programming, or what is the difference between an object-oriented programming and other different type of programming. So has anybody heard about structured programming?
So is it the kind of programming that uses structures like how we use it in C? I think it's called structs.
Yeah, so that's more a very refined definition. But tell me as a layman, how would you define a structured programming?
Sir, is it structured programming, like the code has to be written in in the correct sequence?
Okay. So
Like in the correct order.
yeah.
I mean, like.
Yeah. So the one, all of you are telling me some of the definition, and great. The definitions are great. But let's try to see if we can write a structured programming. Okay. So it's not a definition for your class. Okay. It's just to kind of when you look at a program, it just helps you to kind of understand whether it is a structured program or not. You don't have to write this program. This is just for your reference. So you can just look at the screen. You don't need to write this program, because that's kind of a wastage of time. So let's look at, so you have been asked by your school to write a program which will do the student management system. Okay, so it needs to basically being able to read the details of all the students from a database. It has to kind of find out what is the grade a student has got. It has to find out what is the fee a student has to pay. Let's kind of think about the various different scenarios. So if I basically write this program in this way, or the way conventionally how we were writing the program, so we will have variables. Let's say student name, let's say 1, and I basically give the name of a student, Manoj. Okay, now every student basically need to have a roll number, right? It's called roll number, correct? So let's say each student has a roll number also. Again, let's say it's 1. So we'll not get into the details. Let's just say we need to capture the marks of the student. Right now, I am basically putting the name, the roll number, and what we call it as hard coding. You can just assume that it is coming from an external database or whatever it is. You will learn all those things later. So let's not get into that complexity right now. So we are just putting that value there. Let's say math marks 50 in science marks 50. Okay, let's say we have another student also. Let's call him student number 2. To roll number 2. So let's call him Raju. Roll number is 2. Marks is 20, 10. He okay. So okay. Now, let's say when this data comes to us, what we need to do is we need to find their grade. Okay, so we are going to come up with a very simple logic. If the student has got more than 80%, and the exams are like 50-50, I mean, so 50 out of 50 is the full marks. So total exam is for 100 marks. So anybody who gets more than 80% gets an A. Anybody who gets less than 80% gets a B. So we'll make it as very simple. So if I want to know whether the student name 1 got what's the grade of that student,
We can add math marks and science marks and check if it's greater than 80.
yes. So let's write that logic here. Math marks. Okay, so just to make sure that we don't confuse both math marks. Okay, math marks 1 plus science marks 1 greater than 80. Okay, so we need a grade also, right? Let's create a variable called grade. Grade for student 1. Right now we don't know what is the grade, so I'm just going to put an empty string there. Okay, we need a grade for student number 2.
So we can just leave it like that. I mean, without using equal to operator, we can just declare the variable.
Sorry?
So why can't we just, we don't have to put that equal to and that double quotes. No? We could just leave it like the variable is declared.
Yeah,
Is that
so
possible in Java?
it is possible. I mean, so okay, let's put this way. So I will just let's see that. I mean, we are taking a slight variation. So I put it as grade 1. Okay. Now, what would be the grade if marks is greater than 80? Grade is A, right? Correct?
Yes.
So now I say system.out.println grade 1. Why it is asking if, okay, grade. So grade 1. And this is for student number 1, right? So I'm going to say student name 1 plus grade 1. So if you see my program, it's already in red, which says that it is not going to compile. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
So why it is not able to compile?
So maybe because we didn't assign the value that blank.
Yeah. So so the reason I did that, I mean, it's not a good practice. The reason I did it, but let's say so the reason here is, if in this sequence of steps, if this condition is met, grade A will get a value. Correct?
Yes, sir.
But if this condition is not met, the grade A will not get a value. So program also understands that there is a chance that in this program, grade 1, when I mean, this lane is getting executed, there is a chance that grade 1 will not have a value. Okay, so Java is saying that you have written a program in a way where grade 1 will not have a value. So you have basically just defined it, but you haven't given any value for that. But let's assume that I have an else condition also here. and I would say grade B. Let's see if Java will allow me to run now. So it's allowing me to run, right?
Yes, sir.
So to answer your question, it is possible to just define it is, but many a time, this is not a good programming practice, but many time what programmers do is just to make sure that, because you might be writing a lot of line and you will not have an undefined variable, you are just initializing it with some default value. Okay, so that's just an initialization with a default value. So in this case, even if this line is not executed, grade, I mean, either it will print A or it will print no value, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that's the reason why that's the. Now this is grade. Now I wanted to find the grade of this student number 2 also, right? But I don't want to repeat this. So if it is, I mean, structured way of programming, we will basically convert that into a function or a method. Since I don't want to write all the code, I'm going to use the IDE, a function called refactor extract method. Okay, so that's nothing but instead of you writing the code, you are making the IDE to write the code for you and say display grade, right? So instead of I writing the code, it took, now the advantage is I don't have to worry about writing this for student number 2, to math mark 2, science marks 2. Now let's run the program. Okay, so do you think our program is working fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any questions so far regarding what we did? Because I think now we'll basically slightly change our course and then start discussing about some of the challenges which we will face with this program. Okay, so let me take it as that, I mean, you are clear what we did. Now see, one biggest challenge that you face when you do this is that this data, right, for a student, the roll number, math mark, science mark, this moves together, right? In the sense like, if I by mistake, I put it like this, I might get an error and the program might not behave the way basically I expect the program to behave, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there is a lot of chance that we are all humans, we might make these mistakes. So sometime when we follow this approach, we either need to have a data type which can hold different type of values together, and we need to kind of work on that, right? Or we need a better way of handling data and functions together, or data or behaviors together, so that we will not get into a situation where every time a grade is displayed, you need to make sure that I pass the math mark which is of student 1, I have passed the science marks which is of student 1, I don't make a mistake, and when the programs that you write is like quite big, you might end up making mistakes. So, and if it is like, think about very complex systems like a banking system, or even your board exam systems, things like that. So any small mistakes here can have a big impact also. So the question comes in, how do we basically can manage this? So there are ways in a structured programming also to manage this, but a more elegant, a better solution is to use an object-oriented programming. Okay, so let's kind of come back here. So we saw a crude example of a structured programming. I'm not saying that's exactly the way it looks like, but the biggest, what do you call, the smell there is that the data is independent of the function which you are doing it, and for every value which are like interdependent, which are related to each other, like student name and the roll number, even though they have like so much relationship with each other, it moves independently or separately. So we saw the example. Now let's kind of come to an object-oriented programming. How does object-oriented programming basically handle these things? Okay. So before we talk about object-oriented programming, let's look at our, home, the areas around us, and let's look at what are some of the kind of objects that you see. So I just took a picture of like a dining room. A living room. And even in our day-to-day life, we see a lot of objects there, right? So what are some of the objects that you see here?
Some of the objects?
Sorry?
No, what do you mean by some?
So what do you see in this picture?
Oh, okay, right.
Name the objects that you see in this picture.
Television.
Sorry?
Television.
Sorry, I'm not, it's not clear. Can you come closer to?
TV, television.
Okay, so there is a television. There is one object.
Set-top box.
Sorry?
Set-top box.
Sofa.
Sofa is there. Okay.
Telephone.
Telephone is there. I couldn't find. Oh, yeah, telephone is there.
The fan.
Yeah, fan. Okay, so so in real life, you could see various different objects in your. Let's take the example of television. Okay, now let's take the example of television and then just take it to programming, to the concepts of programming. So in programming, we basically in previous classes we have used variables, right, to store data, correct? And we have used some functions which works on that variable. So if you take the example of a television also has some data which basically kind of represents the television. For example, the color of that television can be one attribute or a variable which can be used to represent the television. For example, in this television, for the attribute color, what would be the value?
Black.
Black.
Oh, so is it like we're going to make a new class for roll number, name and stuff?
We will reach there. Let's kind of first cover the example of television. So I wanted to then map it to the programming world. So let's kind of get the concept of what all are the attributes which are there in the objects, because when you start solving the problem, you should be able to identify what attribute basically I need to write for this class or an object, right? So let's take the example of television. We'll take television as a class or in the other than the color, what is the other attribute or a variable that you can define for television?
A plug.
Plug is not part of television, right? It is
Receiver from signal receiving from satellite, like that. Transition.
Okay. No, that is not an attribute of television. I will come to
So
that.
we can look at the screen size, the width, the height.
Screen size is a attribute. So a screen size can be a variable. So I can say I'm going to create a class called television, for which I will have color as one variable, which is going to define the color of the television. It will have screen size, which is another variable which will define the screen size of the television. What else define the television? What else is required for a television to define a television?
Is it a smart TV?
What is the model type? Whether it is a smart, so that can be another attribute. So we define three variables now. Let's, for the sake of a better understanding, let's put it as like a brand name. What is the brand name of this TV? What is the color of this TV? What is the screen size of the TV? What else?
The stand of the TV.
A stand of a TV is an external thing. So maybe we can say, but no, I think it's better to avoid stand, but because the stand stand is not part of television, right? It can be another
Wi-Fi connector.
Wi-Fi connection. I will come to that. Let's kind of park that.
The materials used.
What is the material used? That can be one attribute of television. Okay.
So what about the type of the TV, like OLED, HD?
Yes, that can be another attribute. So, so there are some parameters which is going to define the TV. For example, you can think about that. How do you going to explain that to your friend? You will say, "Hey, I have a TV, and my TV is 15 inch or 41 inch or whatever in size. My TV is from the brand Samsung. My TV has a color of black. My TV, whatever the other parameters." So these are some of the attribute which defines the TV. Now, when we talked about the TV, we also talked about some of the behaviors, right? My TV can connect with a plug, and I mean, so that's a very primitive, I mean, basic capability. My TV works on my TV should have a capability to connect to a plug, and my TV should be able to receive Wi-Fi, right? What else can be some of the behaviors of the TV?
The screen quality.
Pardon?
Screen quality.
I wouldn't check screen quality, but let's say my TV should be able to capable to switch between an HDMI, sorry, a high definition, image, a high definition movie or a low resolution movie. So I have an option. My TV should have an option to change from various different, image quality sizes. So that can be a behavior of a TV, correct? So the same thing basically can apply to any object in the real life also. So for example, a fan should have the attribute like a number of blades, how many blades that a fan has. My fan has 3 blades, or my fan has 4 blades. My fan should have a color. The color is this. It could have an attribute which is the brand of the fan, and it would have some behaviors or functions like my fan should be able to rotate. My fan should be able to operate with a remote. So these are the behaviors of the fan, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this same concept, you could, whatever is the concept which is there in the real world, you can take these concepts and translate that into programming. So when you do that in the programming, for every class that you are going to define, that class would have a state. State is nothing but the attribute that we talked about, right? This state we are going to define by using variable. We know how to define a variable, right? In the structured programming example that we saw, we were defining the state by the name of a student, his roll number, his max marks. So these are some of the state. For one student, for the state roll number, the value could be 1. For another student, for the state roll number, the value could be 2. So the value for each student might change, but each student will have the state called roll number, correct? In the same way, for each student, there could be a behavior also. What is the grade of the student, right? So the grade can be something that you provide to the program also, but generally grade is usually something that you calculate based on a logic, based on the mark that you get, right? So it's more of a behavior. You are asking, what is the grade of a student? So the program is going to get what is the marks of each student, and then try to figure it out what is his grade is. So you will use a behavior called get the grade of the student. Okay, so that's, I mean, even if it's not 100% clear to you, that's fine. What we'll do is, let's try to do that through a program. Okay, so now what I would request you to do is, because this is the first program that we are going to write as an object-oriented programming. So I would like you to kind of, I will go step by step. I would like you to follow me in writing the program. So I will first write, and I will let you know, then you can come up with whatever is the program that I have wrote till that. Okay. So we are going to use session. Now we wrote this program as a structured program. We are going to change. We are going to do it as an object-oriented program. So we are going to write a class called student. Okay. So when we write a class called student, what all are the state or the attributes the student should have?
Student dot name, student dot roll number, student dot max marks.
Yeah. So let's first define those attributes.
And
Private.
then we can make a method called total.
Yeah. So we'll come to the method later, but let's kind of first define the attributes or the state that student can have. Private string student name. So here you could see that I'm not giving any initial input. Okay, we'll explain why that is. Private int roll number. Okay. Now, in an object-oriented programming, the first question that you need to ask is, when you are going to create an object, okay, called student, okay, what all are the minimum attribute that the student should have? For example, if you basically need to have a fan, the fan should have blades, right? It can be 2 blades, it can be 3 blades, but it's impossible for you to have a fan without blades. It won't be called fan. So in the same way, if there is a student in a class, in a school, what is the minimum attributes this student should have?
Name.
Yeah, so student should
Full
have a
name.
name. Yeah, let's not make it complicated. We'll just say every student should have a name. What else the student should have in a school?
To the class, what grade you are.
Which class you are in? Okay, fine. What else a student should have?
The age.
Every student should have an age, but from a student perspective, that is not important, right? As an individual, the age should be there. I agree, age should be there, but it is not mandatory to define an age. For a student. So let's take a student name, and I basically said roll number. You can say no in my program, or the way I'm going to define my school management system. Every student should have a minimum student name, roll number, age, grade, whatever. You can say that's up to you to define which are the minimum attributes, or which are the minimum state that that class should have. In this example, just because I'm lazy, I'm just going to say my student, if he has a name and roll number, that is good enough for me. Okay. So so I need to make sure that when I'm creating a class, because these are the 2 values which should be there, I'm going to create something called as a constructor. Okay, student name. I will come to this in a minute, what it is, and explain. And I would say student name input value, and in roll number, so what is a constructor? Constructor is nothing. In a simple terms, I am telling that if somebody is going to create a class, like we created a class called string, right? If somebody is going to use my class called student, he will be able to create a student, an object using student, only if he provides this minimum value. This is the minimum requirement. Without this, he cannot create a class called student. So I'm going to say student name. If you are not very clear here, that's okay. We'll come back here. We'll revisit this. Roll number. So this is the way I'm going to create the class. It is possible for you to create a class without no parameters necessary. For example, you can create a string class. So if you remember, we can create a string class, string as new string, right? This is the way we learned how to create a string class, where we will give the value hello here, right? So in the string class, the input, the minimum value that you are providing into the class is hello. In our example, the minimum value, the minimum requirement to create that class is one string input, which is the name, and another roll number input. Okay. And once we create it, we'll not worry about lot. We'll create a very simple object. We need a way to get this value back from this. What is the student name? So if somebody asks this class, okay, what is your name? I should be able to tell him back what is the name. So since I didn't want to write the program, I'm just making the IDE to write the program. So I wrote a very simple object-oriented simple class called student, right? And in my class student, it has a student name, it has a roll number. And to create this class, I need basically input name input value and roll number input value. And there is a way I can get the student name and get roll number back. Okay. Be there with me for 1 more minute. And let's say I'm writing in another class called school management system. You can name whatever you want to. And here I'm writing a main method. Now I can create student class from here, student, first student. And how do I create this new student? Excuse me. And what all are the two inputs that I need to give? I need to give the name. I need to give the roll number. So, and what I can do, I can get the value back. Sorry, I can get the value back. What is the name of first student back? So it will tell me what is this name of this student. Okay, let's run this.
Sir, I think that roll number input value is missing a U.
One second. Where it's missing?
Sir, on the parameter, line number 5 in the end, roll number.
This one. Okay, so this is. Are you talking about this where I have kept the mouse?
Yes, sir, that line, I was thinking maybe you missed a U, that
No,
roll number input value.
So this is not given by me. This is because IntelliJ, to help you to understand better, it's kind of automatically adding that. So it's not really required. I mean, this is a suggestion. Let me see if I can just disable this. Okay. Yeah. So it should look like this. So that's something that the IDE is providing you to help you to understand it better. Okay. So this is the way the program should look like. So I said student, and I created a new first student object where the name is given. And I said get student name. It tell me, okay, the name of the student is Manoj. Okay. Now what we have done is we have created a class called student where that class is here, right? And we have created an object. This is the object that we created. And then whatever operations that we are going to do, we will be operating on this object called first student. Okay. So we'll try to expand the scope of this program. But what I would request you to do is, why don't you write the program so far, whatever written. So first have a student class, and then create another class. And from the public static void main, create the instance of this class. So it's 8:17. We'll give 3 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I will just try to answer it. Or you can share your screen and we'll do it together. So it's what I will do is, okay, this is, you please don't do it like this. You can do it in a different class. This is just for all of you to see it better. think it's okay. For some strange reason, it's not allowing me to do access.
Sir, when I ran the program, it gave us, I didn't type public static main void. Sir, but then here also there wasn't, in this one, in student.java, here there wasn't any public static void main. So what to do?
Can you share your screen? I mean, let's just.
Yes.
Okay.
Says it's in.
Yes, I can see this.
Sir, this is the error I'm getting. It's like
Okay.
I didn't write that. That's
Yeah. So what you should do is this object OOP1 class, right?
Yes, sir.
First compile it. You cannot run this class because this class doesn't have. It's just an object that you are creating. Like string, you won't run, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Sir, should I?
Where is your public static void main method?
So in this one I didn't write because
No, you don't need to write in here. Just like just like there is a Java class, I mean string class. Okay, now this you have to run now. Where you are
okay,
using,
sir.
yeah. What is the error you are getting?
So I'm getting system.out. So maybe this line. It's saying that I didn't. It's saying cannot find symbol.
Okay, let's go the what do you call it, the crude way of debugging. Just comment that line.
So only this line.
Yeah. Now you can just put two backslash. Just you are commenting only one line, right? So you don't have to. This when you can do when you are doing a block commenting. You are commenting multiple lines. Since you are commenting only one line, yeah, that's sufficient. Compile and run it. Yeah, so it's executed fine, right? Okay,
Yes.
now uncomment the I mean just to make sure that the problem is with that line. Now I will tell you what is the problem. See, look at the line number 5. I would like everybody to kind of have a look at this. Okay. Okay, one important thing. Okay, all the class names should follow camel case. Okay, camel case in the sentence. It should start with a capital letter, and even if any, let's say the class name is called object-oriented programming, which basically means O should be capital in the object, oriented O should be capital, programming P should be capital. So whenever
and when we do functions, it will be mixed case, right?
if you are doing a function, you should use camel case, but
first
letter should be
small.
smaller.
Yeah, that's called mixed case.
Yeah, fine. So for example, in this case, line number 5, OOP1, that class is fine, it will compile. There is no problem with that. So from it is all good. But when you write the program next time onwards, I would suggest OOP1, the first O, let it be capital letter. Okay, just a suggestion. Okay, that's the way.
Okay, sir.
Now, in the line number 6, you are saying system.out.println, where you are calling the function called get underscore s underscore num, right?
Yes, sir.
That method is not available in the class called OOP1 underscore 1. It is available in which object?
Sir, it's available in
This
OOP1.
class, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now go to the other class. So here, how are you creating that object with that class?
Oh, yes, sir. I think I mixed up the name because it was here num. Maybe that's why.
No, that might be there, but that is not the problem. First problem. So for example, remember, when you are defining a string, let's go back to string name is equal to Manoj. Then I would do all the operation on name, right? Name dot get length, right? Name dot get character array. Do you remember? So here in the line number 5, you are defining the class with a object called first underscore s. So when you have to call get underscore s not name, it should be first underscore s dot get s dot name. You got me?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Should I write
Not
get
there,
S?
not there. So first you defined that object, okay? So from the class OOP1, you defined the object. The line number 5 is where you are defining it. Now, when you are printing it, call first underscore s dot get s dot name. You can stop sharing. I will share and show that to you. Can you just
Okay,
stop?
sir.
So if you look at my program, I'm defining the class for student. First student is equal to new student dot name, and then all the behaviors I'm calling, all the functions I'm calling on this object. First student dot get student name. You got it, Karthikeya?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that was the reason it was not compiling, because this behavior is on this object. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I think it's already 8:30 now. We'll wrap this session now. So we'll expand from this example on the next class. So what we did is we defined a class which is our class name is called student. From that class, we saw how to use that, how to create an object from this class. For an example, so I'm just going to remove this. I can define any number of objects with this, right? I can also have student, second student.
Sir, I got the output. Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. So I can have another student also called Raju, who has roll number 2. Okay. So this way I can create any number of objects with this class. So remember one thing, class will be, there will be only one class, but with that class I can create any number of objects. I mean, just like in your school, there could be multiple, I mean everybody will be a student, but each student will have different states. One student will be with a state whose name is Manoj, other student will be with the name Raju. So I mean, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this term. So what we call it is class is like a template or a blueprint. Like you will have a blueprint. With this you can create any number of objects. Okay. So we created a class called student. With that we use that class to create a student with a name Manoj. We use the same class to create a student with a name Raju. You can create any number of students from that class. So class is a template and the objects are the actual instance which has like different state, and each state will have a value. It will have a behavior also. So we'll get into these details in the next session. Any questions before we wrap up? Hello.
No
Okay.
doubt, sir.
Yeah, so I will take it that you, I mean, everything is clear to you. We'll expand this program. We'll try to make it more complicated, how to introduce some interesting functionality to these two classes. But before we wrap up, I have one program for you for the programming challenge. So two programs I have already given you. One is the reversing the following string. Java is simple and powerful. I would like you to reverse it using a for loop or a while loop, but you shouldn't be using any of the functions or behaviors available or provided by Java. You should use your own logic. The other, challenge is to write a pyramid like this. So if I give the input as 6, it should be a pyramid of 6. If I give the input as 8, it should be a pyramid of 8. The hint for that is you should start building something like this using two loop, one loop inside and another loop, and try to develop it to create this. So these are the two programming challenge that I already has given you. There is a new programming challenge which is available to you today. The third programming challenge is I would request you to find out to create an encryption program. Okay, so encryption program is very simple. We are not using any complicated logic. If you get a sentence called hello world, you should convert that into an encrypted string, and the logic that you are going to use is the first character you will replace it with the last character in the alphabets. So if your sentence has a window, then A should be replaced with set in the encrypted string. Everybody clear about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is the third programming challenge. Once you figure out the problem, the answer for that, please email me. My email ID is manojwky@gmail.com. This is not your exam. You can always Google and figure it out the answers. There is no problem with that. As long as that you will be able to explain me what is the logic of your program. It's absolutely fine to search in Google, figure it out. There are only two criteria to decide the winner. First, he should be explain the logic of the program, and his program should run. When I try to execute the program should run without any errors. Okay. So thanks guys, thanks for joining today's session. So we will catch up next Friday. We'll get into more details about object-oriented programming and how we can make this program much more interesting. Okay. Thank you all.